I've said for many, many years that the world is made of language. That was just sort of one of my bumper stickers. But I think that that carries some of the flavor of what I want to say there, but that there's more to it than that. It's that everything is code. Everything is code in the sense that hackers mean when they say they write code. Quick to learn, and then they're like tinker toys. Once you know the rules of the connectivity, then you can sit down like a child and begin to stick these things together and say, well, what would this be like, and what would this be like, and does God allow this, or does this break the rules, and so forth. The DNA is like that. Human language is like that. Human body language is like that. Machines communicate like this. In fact, this is a bridge which connects us. This is the great overarching bridge which will connect us to the machines, that they, like us, are commanded by language.
One of the other things that is important to the book and important to integral theory is a term that was coined by author Kessler. Now, he didn't do a lot with this philosophy, but he does have to be credited with coming up with some of its initial insights. And the term is a holon. And a holon is a whole that is simultaneously part of another whole. And so a whole atom is part of a whole molecule. A whole molecule is part of a whole cell. A whole cell is part of a whole organism, and so on. And there is virtually nothing in the universe that isn't a whole that is a part of some other whole. And so that in itself gave a kind of a pattern that connects, that gave a reality that was profoundly interwoven, and profoundly interconnected.
These are pictures of equations. I've been, for the last 15 years, trying to answer the kinds of questions that my colleagues here have been raising. And what I've come to understand is that there are these incredible pictures that contain all the information of a set of equations that are related to string theory. And it's even more bizarre than that, because when you then try to understand these pictures, you find out that buried in them are computer codes, just like the type that you find in a browser when you go surf the web. And so I'm left with the puzzle of trying to figure out whether I live in the matrix or not.
Wait, you're blowing my mind at this moment. So you're saying, are you saying your attempt to understand the fundamental operations of nature leads you to a set of equations that are indistinguishable from the equations that drive search engines and browsers on our computers?
That is correct. So
wait, I have to just be silent for a minute here. So you're saying as you dig deeper, you find computer code writ in the fabric of the cosmos.
Into the equations that we want to use to describe the cosmos, yes.
Computer code.
Computer code, strings of bits of ones and zeros.
It's not just sort of resembles computer code. You're saying it is computer code.
It's not even just is computer code. It's a special kind of computer code that was invented by a scientist named Claude Shannon in the 1940s. That's what we find very, very deeply inside the equations that occur in string theory and in general in systems that we say are supersymmetric.
And so this realization that everything is code and code moving on many levels is, I think, a further... It's more primary than the perception, for example, that things are made of space-time, matter, and energy. That's one level below code. The code codes for space-time, matter, and energy. It's much more like we're in a simulacrum, some kind of machine environment.
Simulacra and Simulation is a book written by the French philosopher Jean Baudrillard and published in 1981. It is primarily concerned with the role that images play in contemporary society and the way that reality is mediated by these images. Baudrillard introduces the concept of the hyperreal, illustrating it through references to a wide range of cultural products, from advertising and architecture to cinema and universities. Baudrillard opens with a supposed quote from the Ecclesiastes. "The simulacrum is never what hides the truth. It is the truth that hides the fact that there is none. The simulacrum is true." He then proceeds to describe a great empire, which, as its territory expanded, devised a map which was so precise in scale and detail that it eventually becomes confused for the actual geography it was only meant to represent. In other words, the map became the empire.
What the Reagan administration were doing, both with Colonel Gaddafi and with the UFOs, was a blurring of fact and fiction. But it was part of an even broader program. The president's advisors had given it a name. They called it perception management, and it became a central part of the American government during the 1980s. The aim was to tell dramatic stories that grabbed the public imagination. And it didn't matter if the stories were true or not, providing they distracted people, and you, the politician, from having to deal with the intractable complexities of the real world.
Reality became less and less of an important factor in American politics. It wasn't what was real that was driving anything, or the facts driving anything. It was how you could turn those facts, or twist the facts, or even make up the facts, to make your opponent look bad. So perception management became a device, and the facts could be twisted. Anything could be anything. It becomes, how can you manipulate the American people?
And in the process, reality becomes what?
Reality becomes simply something to play with to achieve that end. Reality is not important in this context. Reality is simply something that you handle.
There is some confusion as to what magic actually is. I think that this can be cleared up if you just look at the very earliest descriptions of magic. Magic, in its earliest form, is often referred to as the art. I believe that this is completely literal. I believe that magic is art, and that art, whether that be writing, music, sculpture, or any other form, is literally magic. Art is, like magic, the science of manipulating symbols, words or images, to achieve changes in consciousness. The very language of magic seems to be talking as much about writing or art as it is about supernatural events. A grimoire, for example, the Book of Spells, is simply a fancy way of saying grammar. Indeed, to cast a spell is simply to spell. to manipulate words, to change people's consciousness. And I believe that this is why an artist or writer is the closest thing in the contemporary world that you are likely to see to a shaman. I believe that all culture must have arisen from cult. Originally, all of the facets of our culture, whether they be in the arts or the sciences, were the province of the shaman. The fact that in present times this magical power has degenerated to the level of cheap entertainment and manipulation is, I think, a tragedy. At the moment, the people who are using shamanism and magic to shape our culture are advertisers. Rather than trying to wake people up, their shamanism is used as an opiate to tranquilize people, to make people more manipulable. Their magic box of television, and by their magic words, their jingles, can cause everybody in the country to be thinking the same words and have the same banal thoughts all at exactly the same moment.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about the trouble and trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 Between ourselves and reality, as quickly as we possibly can, we erect a lie. We erect a false set of assumptions that are culture-bound. And this has always impressed me, the culture-bound nature of language, that in a way you can never leave the place you're raised in because you acquire a local language. And the local language is all you ever really have.
The moment a child is told what a bird is, if they believe what they're told, then they never see a bird again. They only see their thoughts.
By the time a child is 8 or 9 or 5 or 6, they have covered the entirety of reality with these interlocking little linguistic tiles. Language is like an informational creature of some sort. I mean, languages live, they reproduce themselves.
Virus.
Yes, it's a kind of virus. William Burroughs said this. Yeah. He said English is a virus from outer space. I have no quarrel with this.
By now, cyberspace had become even more sophisticated and responsive to human interaction. The online world was full of algorithms that could analyze and predict human behavior. The man behind much of this was a scientist called Judea Pearl. He was the godfather of modern artificial intelligence. Pearl's breakthrough had been to use what were called Bayesian belief networks. They were systems that could predict behavior even when the information was incomplete. But to make the system work, Pearl and others had imported a model of human beings drawn from economics. They created what were called rational agents, software that mimicked human beings, but in a very simplified form.
We are making such individuals, and we're making them regularly, and we're making them routinely.
I'm thinking I'm a dead person.
The registration of a human being in paper form into the system, called a birth certificate, is the creation of a living being into something static, into something dead. That's why it's called a corporation. A corporation is created, which etymologically comes from the word corpse, and oration, dead speak, dead man speaking, dead human being speaking.
In contemporary capitalistic society, the meaning of equality has been transformed. By equality, one refers to the equality of automatons, of men who have lost their individuality. Equality today means sameness rather than oneness. It is the sameness of abstractions, of the men who work in the same jobs, who have the same amusements, who read the same newspapers, who have the same feelings and the same ideas. Union by conformity is not intense and violent. It is calm, dictated by routine, and for this very reason often is insufficient to pacify the anxiety of separateness. The incidence of alcoholism, drug addiction, compulsive sexualism, and suicide in contemporary Western society are symptoms of this relative failure of herd conformity. Herd conformity has only one advantage. It is permanent and not spasmodic. The individual is introduced into the conformity pattern at the age of 3 or 4 and subsequently never loses his contact with the herd. Even his funeral, which he anticipates as his last great social affair, is in strict conformance with the pattern. In addition to conformity as a way to relive the anxiety springing from separateness, another factor of contemporary life must be considered: the role of the work routine and of the pleasure routine. Man becomes a 9-to-5er. He has little initiative. His tasks are prescribed by the organization of the work. There is even little difference between those high up on the ladder and those on the bottom. They all perform tasks prescribed by the whole structure of the organization at a prescribed speed and in a prescribed manner. Even the feelings are prescribed: cheerfulness, tolerance, reliability, ambition, and an ability to get along with everybody without friction. Fun is routinized in similar, although not quite as drastic ways. Books are selected by the book clubs, movies by the film and theater owners, and the advertising slogans paid for by them. The rest is also uniform: the Sunday ride in the car, the television session, the card game, the social parties. From birth to death, from Monday to Monday, from morning to evening, all activities are routinized and prefabricated. How should a man caught in this net of routine not forget that he is a man, a unique individual, one who is given only this one chance of living, with hopes and disappointments, with sorrow and fear, with the longing for love and the dread of the nothing and of separateness?
Salvation is undoing. Salvation can be seen as nothing more than the escape from concepts. Escape from concepts is also the liberation from the prison of conceptual thinking. When you're identified with it, when conceptual thinking supplies you with your sense of self, then you are trapped in a conceptual prison. And that is ego, that is unconsciousness, and people don't even know it. that they are trapped in it. So the spiritual realization is through letting go of the prison of concepts, so that you no longer inhabit the conceptual reality, which is what most people do, where every perception that you have is filtered through your conceptualization. When you look on something, you immediately have an interpretation for it, you have a label for it, you have a self-reference towards it. I like it, I don't like it, etc. So there's already, you cannot see without concepts. So inhabiting a conceptual reality, so you have a prison that you have for other human beings because you conceptualize them, and for yourself because your self-image is an edifice made of concepts. And salvation is the escape from concepts. And this little part ends with these 3 lines. Those who would let illusions be lifted from their minds are this world's saviors. Again, it links in to the word salvation. When you let go of the prison of concepts, when you awaken, in the terminology of the Course in Miracles, you become a savior of the world. Now, these are the interesting lines here about defensiveness. When you feel the need arise to be defensive about anything, know that you have identified yourself with an illusion. It is not danger that comes when defenses are laid down. It is safety, it is peace, it is joy, and it is God. So, when you feel the need arise to be defensive about anything, know that you have identified yourself with an illusion. When you become defensive about something, then it will be something that is conceptual. You as a concept, or some concept you hold, that you need to defend because you have identified with it, so you are defending your sense of self, your fictitious sense of self.